Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News, and my name is Bahram Gaffarov. Uzbekistan has received $6 billion worth remittances in 2020, according to data provided by the banking regulator. This is $17 million more than a year before. In January alone, the volume of remittances comprised $427 million, up 7% year-on-year. Meanwhile, funds worth $101 million were sent from Uzbekistan. Inflation in Uzbekistan is forecast to decline further to 9 to 10% by the end of this year, according to the central bank's monetary policy review. The regulator says there is a low probability of the prevalence of increasing factors of inflation in the economy. However, there are risks associated with the likelihood of one-time factors of inflation and the preservation of inflation expectations at a high level. One of these risks in the near future is a rise in food prices. The policy of protectionism, the introduction of restrictive measures such as quotas and tariffs on the export of basic food products by exporters can also lead to an increase in the cost of importing basic food products. Uzbekistan's foreign exchange reserves as of February 1st amounted to $34.3 billion, according to the updated data of the central bank. That is $500,000 less than at the beginning of this year.
The decline has happened following $700 million reduction in foreign currency. Meanwhile, Uzbekistan has managed to increase its gold reserves by 0.3 million troy ounces, or about 9 tons. The country's reserves are still very poorly diversified. Almost everything is stored in only 2 assets, gold and foreign currency. The state plans to solve this problem by purchasing U.S. Treasury bonds. The current reserves, according to the regulator, would be enough to finance more than 20 months of imports. This is much more than the 3 months target recommended by international organizations for developing countries.
Uzbekistan's closest neighbor, Tajikistan, intends to increase its gold production by at least 10% by 2021, compared to 8,764 tons in 2020, a source in the Ministry of Industry said on Tuesday. Gold production in 2020 was increased by 8.2% compared to 2019. According to available data, 18 companies in Tajikistan are involved in gold mining. Sardaba water reservoir in Sirdarya region of Uzbekistan will be rebuilt after partial collapse of its wall in May 2020. The current condition of the dam is studied now to avoid recurrence of wall breach, with the necessary technical and economic assessments underway. The construction of the dam will be carried out in 2 stages. The collapse caused more than 70,000 people to evacuate from the area. Over 4,000 houses were damaged by the flood. The Uzbek government is planning to create a mechanism for allocating budget funds based on public opinion. The issues on this path were discussed at the seminar hosted by the Ministry of Finance in cooperation with UNDP on February 16.
It is planned to introduce the procedure for directing 5% of expenditures when forming the budget in certain districts, considering the views of citizens on solving problems, paying special attention to the issues of youth support and public health promotion. In order to suggest an idea for the direction of funds, you need to visit the website openbudget.uz, entering the initiative budgeting section, select your region and write a letter.
I
would like to mention that in the past several years, as part of the reforms of the Republic, particular attention has been paid to the increase of the accountability of the corresponding authorities, as well as the public participation in the budget process. During the seminar, the participants got acquainted with the performance of local and international experts that presented the perspective of development of initiative budgeting in Uzbekistan. They also shared the international experience of participatory budgeting. I would like to say that the examples of international experience and foreign practice, considering the opinions of the citizens in the distribution of the budget, brings to the solutions of the problems. The seminar was attended by the representatives of the Senate of the Ali Majlis, the Center for Development Strategies, the National Movement Yükseliş, as well as experts from Russia and Ukraine.
Uzbekistan and Tajikistan are to set up a mechanism to ensure the stable and timely flow of water to Uzbekistan from reservoirs in the neighboring state. The decision was reached at a video conference held between the deputy PMs of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan.
On February the 15th, the parties agreed to intensify joint work to improve conditions for the development of the volume of mutual trade by consistently eliminating existing technical barriers and ensuring favorable access of Uzbek and Tajik products to the markets of the two countries. Mutual trade is expected to hit $1 billion in the short term. Moreover, it is planned to intensify cooperation on the modernization of a number of hydraulic structures and facilities by attracting financial and technical assistance from international financial institutions and donors.
The following day, Umarzakov met with the PM of Hungary, Viktor Orban, where Hungarian specials were decided to be involved in projects for the management of water resources and renewable energy, modernization of power grids.
Viktor Orban thanked Sardar Umarzakov for his help in the fight against COVID-19 when, at the height of the pandemic, Uzbekistan sent 650,000 protective masks to Hungary. Negotiations also focused on educational exchange schemes, and Orban said Hungary has offered annual scholarships to 100 Uzbek students at Hungarian universities. Earlier, it was reported that 500 students from Uzbek universities expressed interest in applying for scholarships to study in Hungary from September this year.
Uzbekistan has been recognized as a co-author of ZF-2001 Chinese vaccine developed by Zhifei Longkong Biopharmaceutical, as the country is now working on issuing a permit for the emergency use of ZF-2001 vaccine and contributed to clinical research.
We will continue to work with Uzbekistan to create new vaccines and commercialize research and development. Uzbekistan will be provided with benefits in obtaining a vaccine. After receiving permission for emergency use of the vaccine from the government of Uzbekistan, it will be sold in the country under the brand name ZF-UZ-VAK 2001, said Din Fang, authorized for clinical trials in Uzbekistan of Zhifei Longkong Biopharmaceutical. The results of a clinical study of a Chinese vaccine in Uzbekistan show 1-degree side effects such as allergic reaction, slight fever, headache in 5 people, or 3% among vaccine recipients. For comparison, for Pfizer, this figure was 2 to 3.8%, for Sputnik V, 3 to 4%.
Just days after he was acquitted by the U.S. Senate, but admonished by its Republican leader for his role in the attack on the U.S. Capitol.
The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president.
Former President Donald Trump lashed out Tuesday against his former ally, Senator Mitch McConnell. In a statement from his office, Trump said, quote, "Mitch is a dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack, and if Republican senators are going to stay with him, they will not win again." The statement was one of the first issued since leaving office and since he was banned from Twitter permanently. It signals a growing rift between the two most important voices in the Republican Party.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it.
While 7 Republicans voted with Democrats to convict the former president in the Senate trial, not McConnell, who said his vote hinged on a technicality, his belief that a former president could not be impeached. But then from the floor of the Senate, McConnell blasted the former president and said he is to blame for the mayhem.
Unless the statute of limitations is run, still liable for everything he did while he's in office. Didn't get away with anything yet.
Trump and McConnell parted ways in the weeks after the election, with Trump irked that McConnell recognized Joe Biden as the winner. While many Republicans in office still cling to the former president and his strong base of support, others, like McConnell, would like to move on, pointing out that Republicans lost the House, Senate, and the White House under Trump's watch, becoming the first president since Herbert Hoover in 1932 during the Great Depression to do so in a single term.
If you were super rich, you could turn to Goldman Sachs to manage your millions. But on Tuesday, the legendary Wall Street investment bank announced it would offer money management for everyday investors. Through an app called Marcus Invest, an automated wealth advisor will allocate customers' funds based on strategies developed to serve institutions and the wealthy. The minimum to open a Marcus investment account is $1,000, and Goldman will charge a fee of 0.35%, in line with other retail investment platforms. It's a latest move into digital banking as the bank tries to shift its focus from Wall Street to Main Street. Launched in 2016, Marcus offers savings accounts and personal loans to retail customers. Through Marcus, Goldman CEO David Solomon aims to reduce the bank's reliance on volatile revenue from trading and investment banking. Marcus Invest will offer individual and joint investment accounts and 3 types of retirement accounts. Customers will be able to customize their investments by selecting from 3 investment strategies based on their appetite for risk.
A bright orange symbol of hope on wheels is rolling through South Jamaica, Queens, and New York. It's called the Peacemobile. Its creator says this big orange bus exists to curb gun violence and mediate conflict by offering mental and wellness services in the community. Erica Ford is the founder of Life Camp Inc., which stands for Love Ignites Freedom Through Education.
We provide jobs. We provide health and wellness to young people, giving them both conventional and unconventional therapeutic services. We see it very important to not only go out in the street and take the gun and stop the incident, but to help that person heal from what made them think that the gun was the resolution to the problem that they had.
Young people would gather inside the Peacemobile to use the meditation lounge, punching bag, video game area, and even a recording studio. But because of social distancing, Ford now uses her vehicle to meet other community needs.
We're giving out boxes of food along with 100 suits today to the community, to those who don't need. We're giving out PPE, masks, hand sanitizers, and other things that they need to stay healthy during COVID and just help the community.
Since the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in 2020 and the protests that followed, politics and community leaders have been debating the role of law enforcement and how to reduce violence without police. Life Camp works with New York City's Crisis Management System, a network of more than 60 anti-violence community groups with financial backing from the city. According to New York City's Office to Prevent Gun Violence, from 2010 to 2019, CMS contributed to an average 40% reduction in shootings in the neighborhoods it serves. Jessica Mofield, the executive director of the Mayor's Office to Prevent Gun Violence, says such a program can provide role models to show at-risk young people alternatives to violence.
So our intentionality behind this is really to be able to not only provide first chances for our young people, but really to provide them with relationships that they respect, that they trust.
Ford said her dual efforts to prevent gun violence and to help others heal from it offer a model for success.
We've gone up to 562 days where absolutely nobody was shot. And so we know by those small numbers of success that those things can be duplicated if invested. If we invest in what works, we can see even more success.
The sky isn't the limit for aspiring astronauts after the European Space Agency announced its latest recruitment drive. For the first time in over a decade, the ESA is calling for applicants for its next generation of astronauts. It's strongly encouraging women to apply and is looking at how it might add people with disabilities to its roster to boost diversity among crews. Those interested have a 2-month window from late March to late May to apply. To be qualified, applicants should have a master's degree in the sciences or mathematics field. ESA Chief Jan Warner.
We have astronauts from the last selection, and they are still active astronauts, and I would like to see them again going into orbit, going into space. But at the same time, we need also new astronauts to secure a continuity.
The selection process will involve 6 stages that will test candidates' scientific and technical know-how, physical capabilities, and the ability to stay cool under pressure. British astronaut Tim Peake.
When you look at what we're doing in human spaceflight, it is quite remarkable. We are pushing the boundaries. We're asking more of our engineering, of our scientists, of our astronauts, and everybody. And so to be part of this international team that can actually make a real difference is a huge privilege, a real privilege. And it was that really that motivated me to want to be part of this team, to push myself, even further than I thought was possible.
The agency's last recruitment drive in 2008 drew 8,000 applicants, of which 10 reached the final selection. This time around, the ESA is looking to add up to 26 permanent and reserve astronauts.
A year ago, the area in which I live was hit by COVID-19. It was the first place in Italy and also in Europe.
It's been a year since Marzio Tognoli picked up his camera and began taking photos that would soon be shared by international news organisations all over the world. He was a primary school teacher in the small, quiet northern Italian town of San Fiorano, living with his daughter Bianca and his wife Chiara. Then, on the 21st of February 2020, Italy diagnosed its first citizen with coronavirus in nearby Codogno. His area became a red zone, the world's first COVID lockdown outside China. He began documenting how life was changing as the virus spread through the country.
Italy has struggled to contain a sharp rise in infections across the north of the country.
Europe's worst outbreak remains in Italy.
The narrow streets of San Fiorano in northern Italy, a coronavirus ghost town near Milan. Marzio Tognolo is a primary school teacher here.
He was discovered by Reuters after posting intimate pictures of life inside the red zone on social media and began working as a photojournalist. Back then, a lockdown was unprecedented, people wearing masks unusual, and the words social distancing were not yet part of everyday vocabulary. No one knew this would become normality across the globe.
Non perché sia stato il primo a farlo.
It wasn't because I was the first to do it. That wasn't important, but because it was useful in some way. Those who followed my photographs and our story, I think they could prepare themselves better for when the lockdown hit.
E queste sono alcune immagini che
These are some of the pictures that told the story of the first Italian red zone in February 2020. This is the picture to which I'm most connected, because it recounts a completely normal moment in an extraordinary dramatic period.
straordinario, seppur nella sua drammaticità.
Now, a year later, the family is stuck at home in quarantine again. The threat of coronavirus has crept into their home. Chiara had contact with someone who tested positive, and she's now isolating in her bedroom.
Quindi Chiara e Bianca stanno mangiando.
Chiara and Bianca are eating together, separated by the door.
In tutto quello che stiamo vivendo.
Everything that we are living through at the moment has a certain feeling of déjà vu, because it really feels as though we have gone back 1 year. To relive the same things, feel the same way, almost to smell the same smells and breathe the same air. I can't believe it.
As they're both school teachers, Marzio and Chiara will soon receive their vaccines and are feeling hopeful. Bianca turns 4 in May. More than a quarter of her life will have been spent living in the COVID era.
I can't wait until coronavirus ends.
Perché?
Why?
So I can go back and see my friends.
Millions of people in Texas were left without power Tuesday after a rare deep freeze forced the state's electric grid operator to impose rotating blackouts because of higher power demand. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, in an afternoon briefing, said 1.3 million people in his city alone were without power. He appealed to state and local providers to act quickly.
We need to get this power restored ASAP. And at the very minimum, got to give us some information so that we can tell people when they can expect the power to be restored.
At least 4 deaths were tied to the bitter cold engulfing vast areas of the country over the holiday weekend. 2 of those deaths were due to carbon monoxide poisoning, as several people were treated in hospitals for trying to heat icy homes with outdoor grills or propane heaters. And officials say at least 3 people died when a tornado, fueled by a low-pressure system, swept through North Carolina's Brunswick County overnight. In Oklahoma City, volunteers tried to make sure homeless residents could endure the cold snap.
Basically getting everyone a hot meal, sleeping bags, gloves, whatever we can do to help them out and survive the storm.
In a Chicago neighborhood, snow almost completely took over an outdoor patio set. In Texas, some residents found ways to enjoy the chill, riding snowboards or laundry baskets down frozen hills.
You live in Houston, you don't really have regular sleds. Power went out in the Heights, so I'm gonna freeze my butt off. Might as well be out in the snow.
An approaching storm is expected to bring more snow, ice, and sleet from the Texas Panhandle through Kentucky and up through Washington, D.C. to New York City, New Jersey, and Boston.
Majestic monarch butterflies fluttered through Mexico in their annual migration, but this year, the swarms of international tourists that typically accompany their arrival are not making the trip as people shun travel. Every year, millions of orange and black monarch butterflies fly thousands of miles across the North American continent, and sanctuaries in the western state of Michoacán, a World Heritage Site and home to Mexico's largest monarch butterfly reserve, are typically a major tourist attraction. Sanctuary officials such as Ejidatario Abel Cruz say they have only seen about 15% of the foot traffic they would normally receive on weekends. That's unwelcome news for a community that relies on tourist dollars.
Algunos 2,500 ahora.
Compared to other years when we used to receive some 2,500 people, now we only get about 350 to 400 per day every weekend. The situation is very difficult. Many people who make a living from this season have not had enough to invest. Many have closed their businesses.
The tourism slowdown comes as sanctuary officials hope to keep monarchs in the spotlight. Environmental agencies say the butterflies face threats from urban development, pesticides, and climate change. The administration of former U.S. President Donald Trump acknowledged in December that monarch butterflies deserve federal protection under the Endangered Species Act, but said they must wait behind 161 other species. They are not expected to be listed until after October of 2023. Officials are monitoring the areas occupied by the monarchs this year, and a final count is pending to determine the population's size.
Fiscal stimulus hopes helped the Dow squeak out a new all-time high Tuesday. Investors scooped up stocks in cyclical sectors like energy and financials, betting they would gain the most from a reopening economy. Others picked up Bitcoin, sending the cryptocurrency soaring past $50,000 for the first time before pairing its gain. But investors sold bonds, driving up the yield on the benchmark 10-year Treasury to its highest since last February. That propelled financial stocks higher, but pressured tech stocks. Utilities and real estate stocks also fell because they're often considered bond proxies. At the close, the Dow was up 0.5%, but the S&P 500 was flat and the Nasdaq lost 0.33%. The rise in Treasury yields and interest rates worries Vespula Capital CEO Jeff Tomasulo.
When you have interest rates start to tick up the way we've seen today, now, is this a trend or is it not? I'm not sure. But if it continues, we're going to definitely see some issues in the overall market. And I think that's what we're seeing a little bit today.
As Bitcoin briefly topped the 50K milestone, cryptocurrency and blockchain-related stocks soared. Among them, Silvergate Capital, Riot Blockchain, and Marathon Patent Group. Investors also bet on shares of travel-related companies ahead of their earnings this week. Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, and Norwegian Cruise Lines rose. Bank stocks jumped, but Citigroup shares rose less than 1%. A federal judge ruled that the bank was not entitled to recoup the $500 million it had mistakenly wired lenders of Revlon.
So far, these were the latest news for today. Goodbye. Take care.